Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Greg always thought he was a lucky guy. At 41, he had a steady career as a freelance accountant, a comfortable house in a quiet suburb, and above all, Melissa. She was everything he'd ever wanted in a partner: grounded, healthy, spiritual. A yoga instructor for 7 years, Melissa preached a natural lifestyle that rubbed off on everyone around her: organic food, morning meditation, zero toxins in the body. Greg even joked she was more disciplined than a Buddhist monk. But he loved that about her. He loved her dedication, her purity, the way she took care of herself, and him. They'd met at a meditation retreat 5 years ago, married after a year of intense dating, and built a peaceful, harmonious routine. Melissa taught classes at the studio in the mornings, saw a few private students in the afternoons, and Greg worked from home, managing finances for local small businesses. At night, they dined together, talked about their days, planned future trips. It was simple. It was good. It was real. Or at least, Greg thought it was. It all started to fall apart on an ordinary Tuesday in March. The day was sunny, one of those days when spring finally began to show its colors. Greg was in his home office, reviewing a client's spreadsheets, when his phone buzzed. It was an audio message from Melissa. He smiled before even pressing play. She had this habit of sending sweet little messages during the day, tiny reminders that she was thinking of him. Greg tapped the audio and heard her soft voice: "Hey love, I love you, come home soon, okay?" The message was short, rushed, but it had that warm tone that always made his chest feel full. Greg was about to reply when something made him pause. There was a sound in the background. Something that didn't belong. It was the unmistakable sound of a can being opened, that sharp crack followed by the faint hiss of gas escaping. Beer. Greg frowned. Melissa hated beer. It wasn't just a preference, it was practically a life philosophy for her. Beer's full of gluten, toxins, industrial yeast, she'd say every time someone offered her one. She'd drink organic red wine occasionally, or a gin and tonic with natural botanicals, but beer? Never. Not at parties, not at barbecues, not even when everyone else was drinking. Greg played the audio again, turning up the volume. Yes, it was definitely a can being opened. Maybe it was from the TV, he thought, trying to rationalize it. Or someone nearby. But then he remembered, Melissa said she was visiting her sick mother. Greg's mother-in-law, Martha, had been recovering from hip surgery for 2 weeks, and Melissa visited her almost every day. But Martha didn't drink beer either. In fact, her house had been completely alcohol-free since her husband passed away years ago. Greg felt a tightness in his stomach, a discomfort he tried to brush off. He was being paranoid. But something bothered him even more. When Melissa visited her mother, she always called with video to show how Martha was doing, to reassure Greg, so he could see for himself. This time, only audio. Greg looked at the clock. It was 2:30 p.m. He picked up his phone and called his mother-in-law. After 3 rings, Martha answered. "Hi Greg, dear, how are you?" Her voice was weak, but clear. "Hi Martha, I'm good. How are you feeling today?" Greg tried to sound casual. "Better, thank you. The physical therapist came this morning, she really helped." There was a pause. "Is Melissa there?" Greg asked, holding his breath. "Melissa? No, dear. She called this morning saying she had a private class this afternoon, so she wouldn't be coming." "Why? Is something wrong?" Greg felt the floor drop out from under him. No, everything's fine. Just checking in. Take care, Martha." He hung up. The room around him seemed to grow quieter. Melissa had lied. Lied about where she was. And there was the sound of beer. Greg wasn't an impulsive man, but something inside him snapped. He opened the shared location app they both used, a practice they'd adopted for mutual safety. The blue dot marking Melissa had been still for 20 minutes. Greg zoomed in on the map. She was at a condo complex, a modern building near the lake, just 15 minutes from home. He knew the place, but didn't know anyone who lived there. Why was Melissa there? If it was a private class, why lie to her mother? Why the beer? Greg stood up, grabbed his car keys, and left. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He just drove. The trip to the condo blurred together. His hands were sweaty on the wheel, his heart pounding unevenly. He tried to convince himself there was a rational explanation. Maybe it was a new student's house. Maybe she was embarrassed to say she was teaching in a luxury condo. Maybe the student was drinking beer. But deep down, Greg knew. Something was deeply wrong. He arrived at the condo at 3:05 p.m. The gate had an automatic barrier, so Greg parked on the street across from the entrance. He walked up to the gate and, from a distance, spotted Melissa's silver Honda Civic parked in a visitor spot. It was there. She was really there. Greg felt a mix of anger and something worse, betrayal. He went back to the car and waited, eyes locked on the entrance. 20 minutes dragged on like hours. Then, at 3:27 p.m., Melissa appeared. She walked out of the main building wearing black leggings, a sports top, and sneakers. She looked like she'd just finished a class, but something was off. Her hair was loose, not tied back like it always was when she taught. And she was laughing. Talking with someone. Greg saw a tall man with a well-groomed beard, a fitted t-shirt, and running short step beside her. He put his hand on her waist, pulled her close, and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly kiss. It was deep, intimate, lingering. Greg felt something inside him break. He grabbed his phone and started taking photos. Click. 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 5, 6, 7 times. The man said something that made Melissa laugh, then let her go. She walked to her car, got in, and drove off. The man stood there, waving, then walked back inside. Greg sat there, motionless, staring at the photos on his phone. He recognized the man. Not personally, but from pictures. It was Blake. Blake Morrison. Partner at the architecture firm where Melissa taught corporate yoga once a week. She'd mentioned him a few times. Blake is such a good guy, always comes to class, takes yoga seriously. Greg never suspected. Why would he? Melissa had always been open, transparent. Or at least, she'd seemed that way. Greg drove home on autopilot. When he got there, he sat on the living room sofa and stared at the wall. He didn't know how to feel. Anger? Sadness? Disappointment? All at once? At 5:15 p.m., Melissa walked in. She entered smiling, dropped her bag on the kitchen counter, and came into the living room. "Hey love, how was your day?" She leaned in to kiss his cheek. Greg didn't move. "How was yours?" he asked, voice flat. "Oh, tiring," Melissa sighed, sitting down beside him. The private class was intense. The new student is super dedicated, but demanding, you know? Then I stopped by the pharmacy to pick up medicine for my mom. Greg turned slowly toward her. "Funny. Your mom said you weren't going over there today." Melissa's smile faltered. "What?" "I called her earlier. She said you had a private class and weren't coming." Melissa blinked quickly, processing. "Oh, right. I called her this morning and said that, but then I changed my mind and went over real quick, just dropped off the medicine." "I see," Greg said, voice icy. "And where was this private class?" "At a client's house, near downtown." "Address?" Melissa frowned. "Why are you interrogating me, Greg?" Just curious. She hesitated. I don't remember the exact address. It was in a condo. Near the lake? Her face paled slightly. How do you know? Greg pulled out his phone and showed her the photos. Melissa kissing Blake. Blake with his hand on her waist. The two of them laughing, intimate, complicit. Melissa went white. Greg, I can explain, can you? He interrupted, his voice finally cracking. Then explain. Explain why you lied about where you were. Explain why you were kissing another man. Explain the sound of beer in the audio message you sent me, when you hate beer. Melissa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. It's not what it looks like. Not what? Greg stood up, his anger finally exploding. Because to me, it looks like my wife is having an affair with Blake. The Blake who's such a good guy, who takes yoga seriously. That Blake, Melissa? She started crying. Greg, please, just listen, how long? Silence. How long? Greg shouted, and Melissa flinched. 6 months, she whispered. Greg felt his legs give out. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of betrayal. While he trusted blindly, while he planned their future, while he loved her unconditionally. Get out of my house, he said, voice hoarse. Greg, wait, we can talk, I can, get out. Melissa grabbed her bag, still crying, and left. Greg heard her car pull away, then collapsed onto the sofa. But the pain quickly gave way to something colder, determination. If Melissa thought this was going to end like this, she was wrong. Greg wasn't a man of revenge, but he was a man of justice. And justice would be served. The next morning, Greg hired a private investigator. He wanted everything: dates, locations, conversations, undeniable proof. The investigator, a serious man named Frank, promised quick results. Cases like this are more common than you think, Frank said. And usually, when someone's comfortable cheating, they get sloppy. I'll find what you need. 48 hours later, Frank handed him a complete dossier. Photos of Melissa entering Blake's apartment at least 8 separate times over the past 3 weeks. Messages recovered from a cloud backup Greg didn't even know existed, explicit conversations between Melissa and Blake talking about their meetings, about how Greg was way too boring, about how Blake made her feel alive again. There were even messages where she complained that Greg only thought about work and that sex was mechanical. Greg read it all, each word a knife. But what shocked him most was the final revelation in the dossier: Blake was married. Married for 12 years. Had a wife, Lauren, and 3 young children. Melissa knew. In the messages, she mentioned being careful so Lauren wouldn't find out and making the most of it while the kids are at school. Greg felt sick. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the destruction of 2 families. Greg spent the rest of the week compiling everything. He organized the photos, messages, and investigators' reports into one complete digital folder. On the following Monday, he acted. First, he sent everything to his divorce attorney, who began preparing the paperwork. Then he did something he knew would be devastating: he sent a full copy of the dossier to Lauren, Blake's wife. He found her profile on Facebook, saw the pictures of the happy family, the kids smiling, and felt a pang of guilt. But Lauren deserved to know. Just as he deserved to know. He wrote a simple message: Lauren, my name is Greg. We don't know each other, but we need to talk. Your husband is having an affair with my wife. I've attached all the proof. I'm sorry you're finding out this way. He hit send before he could change his mind. 3 hours later, Greg's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? Greg? This is Lauren Morrison. Her voice was steady, but Greg could hear the pain beneath it. Thank you for telling me. I had no idea. Neither did I, Greg said. I'm sorry for what this is going to do to your family. Don't be sorry, Lauren replied, her voice hardening. Be sorry for yourself. And know this, I'm going to destroy him. My dad's a lawyer. Blake has no idea who he's messing with. Greg almost smiled. Justice was coming. In the weeks that followed, everything collapsed for Melissa and Blake. Lauren filed for divorce immediately, demanding full custody of the children and maximum alimony. More than that, she sued Melissa for alienation of affection, a law still active in their state that allowed betrayed spouses to sue lovers for destroying marriages. The case went public. The news spread through their social circle. The yoga studio where Melissa worked received dozens of complaints from students saying they didn't feel comfortable being taught by someone who destroyed a family. The studio owner, under pressure, fired Melissa. Blake lost his partnership at the architecture firm after the other partners decided the scandal was damaging the business's reputation. He also lost custody of his children, getting only supervised weekend visits. And worst for Blake, Lauren, who was the heir to a wealthy family, had signed a prenuptial agreement for complete asset separation. Blake got nothing from the divorce and was ordered to pay heavy alimony. Melissa tried to come back to Greg. She showed up at his house 3 times, begging for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake, that she was confused, that she loved him. Greg just closed the door in her face. He sold the house they'd lived in together, bought a smaller apartment in another part of town, and hired a therapist to process the trauma of the betrayal. It took time, but Greg began to rebuild. He started going out with friends again, picked up old hobbies, began working out. 6 months after the confrontation, on a Thursday night, Greg was at a bar with colleagues when he saw her. Melissa was sitting alone at a corner table, scrolling on her phone, half-finished glass of wine in front of her. She looked different. Her hair, once always perfect, was dull. Her clothes, once vibrant and stylish, were plain and dark. She looked tired, defeated. Greg turned his back, talked with his friends, laughed at a joke. He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel sadness. He felt nothing. Melissa didn't exist to him anymore. When he stood up to leave, he walked past her table. Melissa looked up. Their eyes met. She tried to smile, but it was a broken smile. Greg, she began. He paused for a second. Take care, Melissa. And he walked on, without looking back. 3 months later, Greg met Carla, a 38-year-old librarian, at a book event. She was quiet, intelligent, honest. They started talking about books, then about life, then about relationships. Carla had been betrayed too. She understood. They began meeting, no pressure, no expectations. Just 2 survivors trying to trust again. And slowly, Greg realized it was possible. It was possible to love again. To trust again. Not with the same naive innocence as before, but in a more mature, more conscious, more truthful way. A year after the separation, Greg was in Carla's kitchen, helping her prepare dinner, when his phone buzzed. It was a message from a number he hadn't saved, but recognized. Melissa. Greg, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need to say this. I ruined everything. You were the best thing in my life, and I threw it away. Blake used me, then dumped me too. I lost my job, my friends, my family won't speak to me anymore. I know I don't deserve it, but could we try again? I've changed. I'm in therapy. Please. Greg read the message, sighed, and showed it to Carla. Are you going to answer? She asked. No, Greg said, deleting the message. I'm not. He blocked the number. Carla smiled, stepped closer, and kissed him. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of myself too, Greg replied. And he was. Proud of having survived. Proud of acting fast. proud of not accepting crumbs from someone who destroyed him. Life went on. Greg went on. And Melissa was left behind, alone, carrying the weight of her own choices. The sound of a beer can being opened in the background of a rushed audio message had been the beginning of the end. A tiny detail, a small slip-up, that shattered years of lies in seconds. And Greg never heard that sound again without remembering. Not with pain. Not with anger. Just with quiet certainty that he'd made the right choice. He'd chosen himself. He'd chosen truth. He'd chosen to move forward. And that made all the difference. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.